It was the end of yet another exhausting week. The kind of week where I was lucky if I saw more than a few hours of sleep. I had worked 80-hour weeks for the past 7 years, all to build the company from the ground up. I was part of the reason we hit record numbers, the reason the team had been running smoothly despite all the hurdles. So when the email from the CEO, Michael Bennett, appeared in my inbox with the subject line, "Dinner invitation," a discussion about the future, my first reaction was confusion. I didn't know what to make of it. A dinner? For someone like me who had spent countless hours in the office, underappreciated and often overlooked, dinner with the CEO felt strange. I had worked for this company for 7 years, climbing up the ranks, and yet there were always rumors. Rumors about changes in leadership, about fresh faces coming in, about the board wanting to shake things up. Still, I never thought it would come to this. The email was short and to the point. "I'd like to discuss your future with the company. Let me know when you're available. Dinner, perhaps?" I stared at the screen for a moment. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, but I pushed the feeling away. This could just be a regular meeting, right? Maybe he wanted my input on the new direction the company was taking. After all, I had been at the center of some of our most successful projects. I had always given everything I had. I replied quickly, confirming I'd meet him at the restaurant in an hour. When I walked into the sleek downtown restaurant, I was greeted by the dim lighting, the soft hum of conversations, and the clink of glasses. There he was, Michael Bennett, CEO of the company, sitting at a table in the corner. His expression was unreadable, but the look in his eyes seemed distant, almost like he was preparing for something. "Ellen, good to see you," he said, standing up to shake my hand. His grip was firm but detached. I took my seat, setting my purse beside me, trying to shake the unease that had settled in my stomach. The waiter came by and took our drink orders. I declined a glass of wine, unsure if I even had the appetite for food at that moment. We sat in silence for a few moments. I could tell he was building up to something. Maybe he wanted to compliment me on my work. After all, I had done my best to keep everything running smoothly. Maybe he wanted to talk about a promotion, or perhaps discuss ways we could continue growing the company together. Finally, Michael broke the silence. "So, Ellen," he began, his voice calm but firm. "We've been looking at the company's direction. We've had some discussions with the board, and after reviewing things, it's clear that we need to make some changes in leadership." I felt the air leave my lungs. A slight tremor ran through me, but I forced myself to maintain composure. I had been expecting something like this. The rumors, the whispers, the sudden shifts in office dynamics. It had all been leading to this moment. He continued, "I've made the decision to bring in a new leader, someone who can guide us through this next phase of growth. You've been an incredible asset to this company, but unfortunately, your approach, it's just not the direction we want to go in anymore." My mind raced as I listened to his words, but I didn't let it show. This wasn't a surprise. I had seen the signs. I had been working too hard, pouring everything into this company, all while being passed over for new hires, new interns who didn't have the experience but had the fresh ideas. And now here it was. "We're moving in a new direction," Michael continued, eyes avoiding mine. "And with that, we've decided it's time to let you go. We're really grateful for everything you've done, Ellen, and I want to make sure you transition out smoothly." I blinked, trying to process the words. The finality of it. The casualness with which he said it, as if firing me was as easy as ordering an appetizer. "Well, I suppose these things happen," I said, my voice calm, almost detached. I had been prepared for this moment for months, maybe even longer. I had known for some time that the company was looking for a way to replace me. There had been subtle signs, my projects getting pushed aside, my opinions ignored, the new hires being given more responsibility, the whispers behind closed doors. I wasn't blind. The waiter brought our food, but I wasn't hungry. Michael took a bite of his food, seemingly indifferent to the gravity of what he had just done. I, on the other hand, couldn't help but feel a strange sense of calm wash over me. For years, I had poured my heart into this company. and it had taken everything from me. Now, here I was, sitting across from the man who had just decided my fate. But what he didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had already made plans. I had already reached out to our biggest client, Tech Global, and they were offering me a position, a high-ranking role, a role that would allow me to take control of their operations. And when I was offered that position, I knew exactly what I would do. Michael smiled, as if this was some sort of victory for him. So, we'll have everything wrapped up by the end of the week. You'll get your severance, of course. I nodded, my mind already a few steps ahead. I'll make sure everything's in order, I said, maintaining my composure. I wasn't going to fight it. There was no need to protest, no need to make a scene. I had already won, and Michael had no idea. The following days passed in a haze. After Michael's dinner invitation, I spent the next 48 hours tying up loose ends, as if preparing for a departure I had already accepted. I didn't feel anger, betrayal, or sadness. Instead, there was this strange calm. It was the calm of someone who had been playing a game for far too long and had finally won. But this wasn't about winning for the sake of ego. This was about control. Control over my life, my future, and the choices I had made. I packed my office with the precision of a strategist. I kept things simple. A few framed photos of my team, a few trinkets from long-forgotten conferences, and the leather-bound planner where I had documented everything I had ever done for this company. I didn't need reminders of what I had built. I had carried it all with me, quietly biding my time. By the end of the week, I was sitting in my car outside Tech Global's headquarters. The offer was official. I had signed the papers the night after Michael had let me go. They were ready for me to join their leadership team, to take the reins of the very department that I had once built from the ground up at my old company. It was everything I had worked for, everything I had wanted, without the politics, without the constant undermining. Tech Global had recognized my worth long before I had been fired, and now they were offering me a chance to prove it. I sat in the car, letting the weight of the moment settle in. In less than a week, I would be in charge. The reality of it was almost surreal, but it was also exactly what I needed. It was the perfect opportunity to finally take control of my own destiny, one that I had been denied for far too long. When I walked into Tech Global's office the following Monday, the atmosphere was different. The energy felt fresh, promising. It was the feeling I had once had when I first started my career, like anything was possible. I was introduced to the leadership team, most of whom seemed to have heard of me. Their enthusiasm was palpable. They had been watching me for years, waiting for the right time to extend the offer. The new role wasn't just about managing operations, it was about reshaping their entire approach. Tech Global wanted to dominate the market, and they wanted someone who knew how to build solid foundations while maintaining the flexibility to scale quickly. It was a challenge I was more than ready for, but there was something else on my mind. Something I had been working on silently in the background. While I settled into my new role, I had been in constant contact with our biggest client, Chronotech, a company that Tech Global had been courting for a potential merger. The talks had been delicate. Tech Global wanted to secure the deal, but they hadn't quite understood the intricacies of Chronotech's operations. They didn't have the established relationship with Chronotech that I did. I had built that relationship over years of careful negotiation, trust building, and seamless collaboration. Chronotech had approached me long before I even knew I was about to be fired. They had recognized my value and had offered me a position as their chief operations officer. At first, I had hesitated. I didn't want to abandon my career at my current company just yet. But as the whispers of my termination grew louder, I knew that this was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. So I had reached out to Chronotech and told them that I would be joining them once the terms were finalized. Now it was all coming to fruition. I called Marcus, my contact at Chronotech, that morning. His voice on the other end of the line was filled with urgency. "We've been hearing some unsettling things from your old company, Ellen," he said. "They've been dragging their feet on the contract renewal, and now we're hearing rumors of an internal shakeup." I didn't flinch. "I'm aware," I said quietly. "But I think it's time we talk about moving forward with the deal." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. I'm officially free from my previous company, and we're ready to finalize everything. Marcus was silent for a moment. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Are you sure about this? The new leadership at your company? They're going to try to salvage this, right? They're going to offer you more. I smiled. They can try, but the offer isn't on the table anymore. What they don't realize is that I've already made my move. I had already contacted the board at Tech Global, explaining the situation delicately and letting them know that I would be transitioning out as soon as the deal was finalized. The ball was now in their court, but I was in control. For the next 2 weeks, I watched from the sidelines as Tech Global continued to try and salvage the mess that had been created when I walked away. Michael and the new leadership team scrambled to keep things afloat, but it was clear that they had no idea how to handle the critical vendor relationships I had built. It wasn't just about Chronotech. It was about a web of partnerships I had woven, all of which were now on the verge of collapse without my guidance. But nothing could have prepared them for what happened next. The next few days passed in an almost surreal haze. I was at Tech Global now, settling into my new role, but the shadow of my old company lingered like a specter in the background. I had hoped that stepping away from the chaos would give me a sense of peace, but it only made the reality clearer. I had been undervalued and overlooked for years, and now I was in control of something far more powerful than I had ever imagined. But as my new team at Tech Global celebrated my arrival, the company I had left behind was starting to feel the strain. The phone calls, emails, and meetings I had quietly orchestrated were beginning to take effect. Every day, I watched as Michael and his team scrambled to handle the fallout. They were trying, too late, to patch things up with Chronotech and other vendors, but the damage was done. It didn't take long for me to receive the first call. It came from my old assistant, Derek, at my previous company. His voice was shaky, but I could hear the desperation underneath. "Ellen, I think we've got a problem," he said, barely able to contain his panic. "Chronotech just told us they're pulling out of the contract. They're saying they've received a better offer and that they're not moving forward with us. No warning. No nothing." I could almost hear the fear in Derek's voice. Chronotech was our biggest account. Losing them would send a ripple through the entire operation. But I wasn't worried. I had known this was coming. "Have you spoken to Marcus?" I asked, maintaining my composure. Derek paused for a moment, and I could tell he was putting the pieces together. "Marcus?" he asked, his voice faltering. You were talking to them, weren't you?" I smiled softly, though he couldn't see me. "I've been in touch, Derek. I had a feeling this was coming. And now it's just a matter of time before the rest of the pieces fall into place." I hung up the phone, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. I had done what needed to be done. The contracts were already in motion. The deal I had set up with Chronotech was official, and the terms had already been agreed upon. The shift in power had happened, and now the company was beginning to feel the consequences of their actions. Meanwhile, back at my old company, I could hear the panic rising. Derek wasn't the only one calling. The emails were flooding in. Vendors, partners, and clients were starting to question the sudden instability. The entire supply chain was beginning to crack. The company's once sturdy foundation was starting to crumble, and no one knew how to fix it. As the week progressed, the pressure mounted. Tech Global was waiting for the official announcement about Chronotech's departure from my old company. It was the moment we had all been waiting for, the final step in securing the deal. But I wasn't going to let them off easy. No, I had my own plan. The phone call came on Friday morning. "Ellen," Marcus's voice was tense. "We've just received word from your old company. They're trying to pull some last-minute tricks, offering a counterproposal. They're desperate. We need to decide if we want to accept or walk away." I leaned back in my chair, the cool silence of the office surrounding me. The decision was already made. "Tell them no. They had their chance. It's over." Marcus hesitated. "Are you sure?" I've never seen them panic like this before. I smirked. "Trust me, this is exactly what I wanted." Later that day, the emails started to come through. First, it was an internal memo from Michael, apologizing to the team for the abrupt changes and the loss of key clients. Then, the public statement hit. The company was in damage control mode, trying to spin the situation in their favor. But the words were hollow. It was too late. Tech Global's client base had already begun to grow exponentially. The deal with Chronotech was only the beginning. I was already fielding calls from other companies that had been waiting for the right opportunity to jump ship. And with every new contract signed, the hole my old company had dug for itself grew deeper. By the end of the week, I knew the game was all but over for them. They had tried to replace me, thinking I was expendable. But what they didn't realize was that I had built everything. The contracts, the relationships, the strategy. They couldn't replicate it, not even with all their new interns and fresh faces. The truth was, they needed me more than I needed them. And as I sat back in my new office, watching the whirlwind of activity unfold, I knew this wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't about rubbing their faces in their failure. It was about something deeper. It was about the quiet power of knowing your worth, the power of standing up for yourself when no one else would. I had played the long game, and now it was paying off. I had rebuilt my career from the ground up, and in the process, I had built something stronger than the company I had left behind. Tech Global was mine now. But more than that, my future was in my hands. And I wasn't about to let go of it. 2 weeks had passed since the shockwaves of my departure had hit my old company, and I could feel the world shifting beneath my feet. The initial relief I felt upon walking away from the chaos was starting to fade, replaced by a quiet but persistent unease. Yes, I had secured my future with Tech Global, and yes, I had taken control of the situation with Chronotech. But as the deals rolled in and the deals my old company had taken for granted slipped through their fingers, the reality of it all hit me. I had lost everything I had built. And yet, I hadn't. My phone buzzed, bringing me back to the present. It was a message from Clara, one of the few people who had truly believed in me at my old company. She had been in the trenches with me, had witnessed the long hours, the sacrifices, and the eventual, inevitable breakdown of everything I had worked for. She had also seen the way Michael and the new leadership had treated me, like I was replaceable, dispensable. They're losing it, Ellen. The whole team is in turmoil. Michael's scrambling to make nice with clients, but the damage is irreversible. How does it feel to watch it all fall apart? I stared at her message for a few moments. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. After all, I had been dismissed with nothing but a few polite words and a severance package. I had been treated like an afterthought, a cog in a machine that could be easily replaced. But seeing the aftermath, seeing how everything I had built was unraveling without me, felt different. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure. I texted back, "It's not about winning, Clara. It's about moving forward. It's about knowing that what I did had value, even if they never saw it." I leaned back in my chair, letting the quiet hum of the office settle around me. At Tech Global, things were moving at lightning speed. We were scaling faster than I had ever imagined, and with every new partnership, with every new deal, I could see how much I was needed. But that wasn't what was on my mind now. The truth was, I hadn't expected to feel this hollow. I had planned every move meticulously, but the emotional cost of walking away from everything I had known was becoming clearer by the day. I had sacrificed friendships, trust, and loyalty. I had made my peace with it, but now I was wondering if that peace would last. As I sat in the conference room later that afternoon, going over the latest metrics with my team, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. We were growing fast, yes, but I hadn't truly built the kind of company I wanted to lead. Not yet. "Ellen," Marcus's voice broke me from my thoughts. He was Tech Global's COO, a no-nonsense kind of guy who never let anything slip by without his notice. He had been instrumental in securing some of our biggest deals, but today his expression was different. Tighter. "We've got a problem." I raised an eyebrow. "What's going on?" "It's your old company," he said, not mincing words. "They're circling back. They're trying to get a meeting with you. Michael's involved. He's asking if you'll come back. They want you to lead their restructuring efforts." I froze. I hadn't expected this. I had assumed that once I left, they'd never look back, that they'd be too busy trying to patch the holes I had left behind to even think about offering me a chance to return. But here it was. They were asking for me. It was an offer I couldn't have imagined 2 weeks ago. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. The offer was tempting. I could go back, fix what had been broken, prove to them that they had made the biggest mistake of their lives by letting me go. I could take control of everything, reclaim the legacy they had stripped from me. But at what cost? "No," I said quietly, the answer coming to me before I even realized it. "I'm not going back." Marcus looked at me, surprised. "You sure? This could be the perfect opportunity to fix things, make things right. You were their backbone, Ellen." I shook my head. "It's not my fight anymore. They had their chance. They made their choices. Now I make mine." The words were final. I could feel the weight of them, but there was something freeing about saying them aloud. The company I had once believed in, the company I had given my all to, had chosen to discard me when I was at my peak. They had chosen to let me go when I was essential to their success. Now they wanted me back, but I had already moved on. I looked out the window, watching as the sun dipped below the skyline. The transition from one chapter to the next wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I had made my mark at my old company, but now I was building something better, something stronger. I was building a team that valued me, that saw my worth, and I was ready to take them all to new heights. But Michael's call, the offer to return, lingered in the back of my mind. It was a reminder of everything I had left behind, and everything I had gained in return. It was a test of my resolve. I could have gone back. I could have taken their offer and shown them that they had made the wrong choice. But I didn't need them to prove my worth anymore. Tech Global was mine now. I wasn't just a cog in their machine anymore. I was the one steering the ship. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Clara. "You did it, Ellen. You built something they could never take from you. Tech Global's about to explode, and they're going to wish they never let you go." I smiled, not because I was reveling in their failure, but because I had learned something invaluable. You don't have to fight back with anger. Sometimes the best revenge is success. The morning after the meeting with Marcus, everything seemed to click into place. The relief I had been expecting after rejecting the offer to return to my old company never came. Instead, there was an overwhelming sense of clarity. I didn't need to go back. The door was closed. Now, I had something better. Control. Tech Global's board had fully backed me since I joined. Their support had been unwavering, and the recent surge in the company's stock price only reinforced the fact that the path I had chosen was the right one. But what really settled in me was the power I had to build something that wasn't just for me, but for the team that had followed me. They had believed in me, and now we were about to make our mark on the industry. Yet even as I marveled at how far we had come, I knew something was missing. There was still a piece left to put into place. The final piece of the puzzle that would secure my new role in the industry and leave no doubt that I had made the right decision. Chronotech. Our relationship had been established long before I left my old company. When I first started at Tech Global, I knew that securing Chronotech as a client would be a game changer. We had already been in talks, but it was clear that my old company had mishandled the relationship. They had taken their success for granted, assuming that loyalty and years of partnership would automatically translate into continued business. But loyalty wasn't enough, and they were about to learn that the hard way. It was time to finish what I had started. I had already spoken to Marcus about moving forward with the deal. Everything had been put in place, but there was one more step. I needed to speak with Chronotech's leadership directly. The call was set for 2 p.m. that afternoon. I walked into the conference room, feeling the familiar weight of anticipation. I had handled so many negotiations like this in the past, but this one was different. This was the final step in asserting my independence. This was my chance to show Chronotech just how much value I could bring to their operations, and in turn, show the world just how much value I had been offering all along. When the call connected, I was greeted by the familiar face of Marcus, and beside him, the CEO of Chronotech, Peter Caldwell. He looked every bit the part, polished, confident, and a little weary, as if he had been through the motions of these calls too many times before. "Ellen, good to see you again," Peter said, his voice warm but measured. "Likewise, Peter. I hope everything is going well on your side," I replied, leaning forward with a smile. "Things are moving fast here," Peter said. "We're really excited about the future. Your proposal has been carefully reviewed, and we're ready to move forward." I could feel the power shift. It was subtle, but it was there. Tech Global was now on the verge of locking in a deal with Chronotech that would not only position us as a key player in the tech industry, but it would also solidify my position in the company. This wasn't just about the financials. This was about establishing Tech Global as the true leader in innovation, and I was the one driving that vision. "We're ready to discuss the terms of the partnership," I said, focusing on the objective. "But before we do, I think it's important to ensure we're aligned on our goals moving forward." Peter nodded. "Absolutely. We've been watching your growth at Tech Global. It's clear that you have a vision, and that's exactly what we need in a partner." "We both know how critical Chronotech is to Tech Global's next phase," I replied. "That's why I've taken the necessary steps to ensure this partnership is one we can both depend on. The terms are more than fair, and we're ready to make it official." I wasn't exaggerating. Chronotech's proprietary technology was integral to Tech Global's upcoming AI-powered operations hub. Without it, we would be looking at a long road ahead, with setbacks that could delay everything by months. But with this deal, we had the power to move forward immediately. And it wasn't just about the software. It was about aligning our brands, our goals, and our values. After a few more minutes of discussion, we had hammered out the final details. Chronotech was on board, and the deal was ready to be finalized. The tension that had been building between the two companies over the past few months had melted away. "We'll send over the contracts for signatures later today," Peter said, his tone firm. "This is going to be a great partnership, Ellen." "Looking forward to it," I said, keeping my voice steady, though inside I could feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just another deal. This was the culmination of everything I had worked for, proving to myself, to Tech Global, and to everyone who had ever doubted me that I was worth more than I had been given. The call ended, and I sat back in my chair, letting the realization wash over me. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The final piece had fallen into place. And as I looked out the window at the bustling city below, I knew that my journey was just beginning. But even as I prepared for the next steps, I couldn't shake the feeling that Michael, my old CEO, was still watching from the sidelines. He had fired me. He had thought he could replace me. But what he didn't realize was that I had been the one holding the company together. And now, as Chronotech's new partner, I had positioned myself to be the one to shape the future of the industry. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Tech Global was on the rise, and my role in securing the partnership with Chronotech had cemented my place as one of the most powerful people in the company. The growth was undeniable. Deals were being signed, new clients were flocking to us, and every day I saw the results of the groundwork I had laid. But even as the success built around me, there was a quiet sense of reflection that never left me. When you get everything you want, everything you've worked for, it's not the victory that stays with you. It's the cost. The people you leave behind, the relationships you've sacrificed, and the weight of the choices you've made. I had risen, and I had done it on my terms. But now, as I stood in my office, looking out over the city skyline, the question I had been avoiding was finally pushing its way to the forefront of my mind. Was it worth it? The phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Clara. "Ellen, you're not going to believe this," she said, her voice urgent. "I just heard from Derek. They're officially announcing Michael's exit from the company." I froze, the words hitting me like a punch to the gut. Michael, the man who had fired me in that cold, dismissive dinner, was being removed from his position. The very man who had thought he could discard me like an old file was now being shown the door. "Does it surprise you?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. "I don't know," Clara said. "Maybe not. But it's the way it happened that's interesting. The board pulled the trigger. And you know why? It's not just the Chronotech deal. It's the fact that he couldn't keep the company afloat. The vendors are dropping off, the financials are in the red, and everyone's pointing to him as the cause." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of it all. I had spent so long focusing on building my own future that I hadn't thought much about the fallout. But as I looked at the news unfolding before me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. Michael had underestimated me. He had underestimated my ability to not only survive, but to thrive. Still, the feeling was not as sweet as I imagined. There was no triumph in watching someone else fail, no satisfaction in their downfall. It was as if the power I had fought so hard for felt a little emptier now that I could see the consequences of my success. "Do you think this is over?" Clara asked, interrupting my thoughts. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I'm not going to sit around waiting for it to happen. I'm done looking back. My future is here. Now it's time to look ahead." I ended the call and stared at my reflection in the glass window. The woman staring back at me was different than the one who had left my old company months ago. She was sharper, more composed. But the scars of my journey were still there. Quiet reminders of everything I had to give up to get here. The next few days were a blur of meetings, press releases, and constant updates about the internal shakeup at my old company. The media was buzzing, reporting on Michael's sudden exit and the dramatic restructuring that was underway. It was the kind of corporate drama that made headlines, but the real story was deeper than what the public could see. For me, it wasn't just about my old company losing control. It was about what I had built in its place. Tech Global, my new home, my new foundation. And as the days went on, I realized that the true cost of my success wasn't just measured in professional terms. It was personal. At the end of the week, as I prepared to board a flight to a global conference where I would be presenting Tech Global's new vision to industry leaders, I got a message from Michelle, our legal advisor at Tech Global. It was a formal email from the board of directors at my old company. "Dear Ellen, we regret to inform you that we have reconsidered your previous offer to return. We acknowledge the value of your contributions to the company and would like to apologize for the manner in which your departure was handled. We would be honored to discuss the possibility of your future involvement with us. Sincerely, the board." I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. After everything that had happened, after they had pushed me out, humiliated me, they were now asking for my help. But instead of feeling triumphant, the email left me feeling nothing. I wasn't interested in going back. I had moved forward, and that chapter of my life was closed. I was no longer seeking validation from a company that had once been my entire world. I had built something better, something that was mine, with no need for their approval. As the plane took off, I looked out the window, feeling the weight of everything I had gained. I had lost so much along the way, but in the end, I had found something more valuable. I had found my true worth. And that was something no one could take away. When the flight landed, I was met by my team, excited for the future, eager to make their mark. And as we walked into the conference, ready to showcase the future of Tech Global to the world, I knew that I had finally arrived. Not as a product of my past company, but as the creator of something new. I didn't need them to define me anymore. I was defining myself.